So we're coming off a busy weekend, as you guys can tell in the studio if you're watching. We're actually in my sister's room still. It's been a big week and we're still here. We aren't back in the tent yet. And it's been a really fun time. And I just have to give a shout out to Elisha's loyalty in general. Well, not just to me, but to our listeners, because anytime there's a week like this, I try to get him to not do 2 episodes. And he's like, no, we've got to do 2 episodes. And so you guys owe it to him that we're doing an episode today. But I think it's going to be fun. He picked out some Q&A questions. Give me a easy, what do you call it? A softball? Soft pitch or a...
Sure. Yeah,
I don't know. Make it like a fun episode. And so I don't know what these questions are, but I'm excited to dive into them. And I just have to say, we were just at a camp this last week where we ran into so many of our listeners, so many of you guys we've never met before. And it was such a delight to meet your families and your spouses and hear a little bit more about your lives and your businesses. And Elisha and I are just blown away and so encouraged by you. And yeah, I tell you what, if you guys are in a season where you're feeling like you're isolated and you don't have community locally, or you're just feeling like, where is the church? You know, I really encourage you to get out and go to a family camp or a homeschooling conference or something, because it will just renew your vision and give you hope for your children's spouses and hope for your country. So anyways, it was just a really encouraging time meeting you guys. And yeah, we're gonna dive into the episode. But I will say the way that this episode and just any episode on the podcast gets out is primarily word of mouth. You sharing either on social media or in person that you enjoy this podcast. And that's how we're able to connect with more like-minded families. So we just want to thank you guys for sharing it with people that you love. It is so fun to meet you in person.
The Now That We're a Family podcast.
All right, Katie. Well, I'm the one with the questions pulled up here, so I think I'm just gonna read them in the order that I pulled them up on our Q&A little section on our website.
Okay.
So we'll go through like that. Does that sound good?
Fun. That sounds good.
Right.
I have no clue what to expect, but that's the way I like it.
Yeah. Hopefully nothing. No huge, like nothing too heavy or burdensome. Lord willing. We always say that. We're always like, let's just keep it light. Let's keep it light with the questions, and then we're talking about heavy stuff. Okay. So this is a fun topic, I think. It says, hello, I would love to hear your thoughts on adoption and fostering. I feel like there is a big calling on the Bible to take care of orphans and widows, but I haven't heard you guys talking about it. What do you think about giving the opportunity to a child that doesn't have a family to join yours? And that's from Myra, I believe that's how you say your name, from Quebec, California, or Canada, CA. Dude, that's just because is there a Quebec, California? It's got to be Canada.
I don't know. I think it's Canada.
Yeah, when in doubt, I'd say Quebec's the famous ones in Canada.
Yeah. This is a good question. And so actually my cousins, we would love to have on the podcast one day. There's a few families that have fostered and adopted close to us we would love to have on the podcast, and it just hasn't worked out yet because obviously we can't speak from personal experience on this issue, which is why you don't hear from us on it. But a couple of my cousins, they were unable to have children of their own, and they have adopted, is it 7 or 8 children now?
I hope we get to see them this summer, but
yeah, I'm hoping in August we might be able to
see them at a family reunion. But that's a good question. I don't know how many they've adopted at this point.
But they just have a delightful family. And seeing them, it is such a huge deal walking through the fostering process to the adoption process and just all the unknowns along that journey. Wanting to keep the baby, having different parents involved, it is a huge deal. It's a huge deal for the whole family. And so we have seen families like their family that's just delightful. They have done it so well. And then I think, like with anything, I don't know what you would say, Elisha, but I feel like for a family that has children already, like biological children, this to me goes under that category of ministry. And so it's like a family outpouring. And just, I feel like you need to really make sure that you're not neglecting your first priority, which is the children that the Lord has given you currently.
Like biologically.
Exactly. Like if you already have children in your home you don't want to be flippant in going out and bringing in other children as a ministry, because it's a beautiful ministry. But it also does involve the entire family. And so I have seen some families, at a further distance, kind of blow apart through the parents' heart to bring in other children, but they did so at the cost of relationship with their biological children. And I can only imagine how difficult it would be to juggle all that. But there's just a lot of variables in that. And you just definitely have to seek the Lord for your family if he's calling you to that ministry.
Yeah, we've certainly talked about this topic, fostering or adopting, or both, obviously, a handful of times. Usually when we've been in, I say in air quotes, bigger breaks from having our own children, that's usually when the conversation has come up. But I don't think we've necessarily strongly considered it when you were pregnant or when you were, like soon after giving birth to a child. Just because of the state of our family at that point. It felt like that was taking all of our time and energy, and that it seemed like it behooved us to pour all of our energy into the family that the Lord had for us right then. However, I think you and I are both very open to that in our future. We have no clue the timeline, what and how it would look, and if it would be fostering, if it would be looking here in the U.S., or if it would be looking outside of the country. And I'm glad you brought up your cousins, because I think they are a very inspirational example of what a family can be, that's not biological, that you adopt. And of course, the theme, as you mentioned, is so prevalent in the Bible. Not only our commission to take care of the orphans and the widows as Christians, that God has commissioned us to do that, but just the fact that we are ourselves adopted into God's family seems like a template for, how we can then take that ministry that he has ministered unto us and take that to the world. And so I do think it is something that not only is incumbent upon Christians to consider, to pray about, to pursue, but it's also been true about Christians, throughout the history of the church. And so I think it's another area where it is fun to look at church history and to acknowledge that, that's right, Christians are the ones that have done this more than any other, religious group or just group of people in general. And it is something that I'm grateful for I'm grateful, how do I say that? I'm grateful for the Christian legacy in that area. I think we should draw from that and be inspired by that. And the reason I've been really inspired by your cousin's family is because of their culture is so their culture. It's not, and I think that probably maybe from witnessing this, or maybe just from my own perception, I thought, man, it would be so hard to have a culture if you don't have the biological connectivity, right? Because obviously when you and your spouse have your biological children, there's the blood running through their veins, right? There's the DNA, there's the physical similarities. There's some, physical traits that they might, be passed on to your children. And so you think that that's a big part of like tradition and culture. And then I see with your cousins, and it's the whole spectrum, as far as the diversity, just like in ethnicities that they've adopted, and yet they've got such a distinct culture that is the mother, starting at the mother and the father, and it's very united, and that's really fun to see. It's really inspirational. And yeah, to echo what you said, unfortunately, I did witness a handful of times growing up parents that felt compelled to adopt, and it did seem to really tear their family apart. At least last I heard, of them, as far as the children that were in trying seasons in their life, maybe having somebody that was a new teenager, and then, that teenager feeling like they were neglected because of bringing this child in. And you would hope that it is very much a family mission if you're going to do, if you already have biological children, and you've got a 12-year-old, or you've got a 9-year-old, or you've got a 15-year-old, that there is this understanding of this is what we are doing as a family to minister in a way that we feel God has led us.
Yeah, I think after we had our fourth, and it was kind of a rough pregnancy, and I was like, I don't really want to ever do that again. We talked quite a bit about adoption, and I think it's something like I don't want to be flippant about, because you guys who have adopted or have fostered, really only how that road is. Mm-hmm. And I think I was flippant about talking about it, like, oh yeah, maybe we'll adopt, maybe we won't, just kind of like it's something you do, it's something you don't. And the more I've just seen families close to us foster and adopt, because there's also a couple of families at our church, I'm just like, wow, it's not something to take lightly. And it's even like I know this sounds ridiculous, but even like getting her puppy, you know, it's just like, in terms of like, you don't know what you don't know, like how difficult it can be.
Yes.
And so I think of that with like a human soul, you know, how much more of you just want to make sure the Lord's really leading you. It's not something you do on a whim. But I think that it's really beautiful, like Elisha said, that the church has been a part of orphanages and having homes for children. And it's something that we might be a part of one day. I do think because of our fertility at this point, I don't really see that being something that is going to, like, I guess as we've had more children, I'm like, I don't know if we will ever have that bandwidth in our lives as parents. But yeah, we're not like a closed door to that. Like, oh, we never do that.
Yeah. And it is I think it's really, we've got the awesome opportunity of being pretty close to a family in the small group of our church that has recently gone through the fostering and adoption process. And really, I mean, we haven't known them a real long time, but the last couple of years they've been on the journey, and there's a lot of highs, you know, they've been able to share a lot of the highs and lows, the challenges. And they're extremely united as a couple, which is a must. I mean, talk about a big decision that you need to be united in. And certainly be drawing your strength from the Lord and from each other in that, in marriage. And so I'm grateful to have those examples relatively close to us to look to. And I think, like you said, that in the future, if that is something that we feel like we want to pursue, then we know who to seek counsel from. You know, these people that are doing it and have gone through it. I think it would probably be wise to seek counsel. Okay, moving on. Wow. Next question.
What? What? Well, I just don't have anything else to say.
I thought you were reading ahead. I saw you reading the question here. I was like, I'll read it ahead.
No. I was just looking at it, trying to look for the question.
Okay.
The summer games are just around the corner, and there's no better way to show your support.
You got this, Katie. I believe in you.
Ooh, that was a really rough start for America. Then with a delicious meal made from 100% American meat. GoodRanchers.com is the #1 place to get gold medal quality meat that supports real American farms and speaks to the excellence of the USA. I do agree with that.
Yeah.
And right now, you might not be Simone Biles, but you can still go for the gold yourself by subscribing to Good Ranchers. They're giving all new subscribers a free gold medal add-on for the next 4 years. Good Ranchers does the biggest things.
Yeah.
Okay, you can enjoy a free plain chicken breast, Angus ground beef, Applewood bacon, or wild-caught salmon in every order for the next 4 years or until the next summer games. Plus, with our exclusive code, VOTEBERG, you'll get an additional $25 off your first box. That's up to over $1,200 in savings when you subscribe. Hopefully you guys have held out and not subscribed until now. Right. Use our code VOTEBERG at checkout to claim $25 off your first box, free express shipping, and your free add-on for 4 years. If you need any other reason to support Good Ranchers, they're not only amazing partners of our show, but they also support the paralyzed veterans of America, too. Every order saves American farms and supports American veterans. If you're proud to be an American, then Good Ranchers is for you. Root for Team USA while enjoying the world's best meat that's born, raised, and made right here from local farms and ranches in the USA. Remember to use our code VOTEBERG to claim this summer game special and save big while supporting American farms. GoodRanchers.com. American meat
delivered. But real quick, is Simone, is that her name? Simone Biles?
Yeah.
Does she still compete?
She's back. She is. It's crazy because I feel like gymnasts used to peak at 16 years old.
Right.
And she's in her 20s, like not even her early 20s, I don't think.
Yeah, so this must be like her third Olympics or something?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and she's stronger than ever. She's doing crazy stuff.
Good for her. All right, folks, you know what to do. So, yeah, I mean, this could almost go with that question, but it's a different question. It says, what were some ways that your families served, in quotes, together while you were growing up? What does this look like for your family now, especially with younger kids? Thank you so much.
Do you want me to go?
Well, yeah, or I can go. You want me to go?
Yeah.
All right. Okay, so a couple things that popped into my brain. I got this. All right. a couple of things that popped into my brain that were very practical things that my parents did. So, I think that this probably is, I'm grateful that you acknowledge this is most likely going to look different for each family, depending on their strengths, their capabilities, their, propensities towards different subjects. And that was certainly the case with my family. And it was one of those things that I didn't even realize at the time because it was just who my dad was. It was who my mother was. And so my dad was a logger. He grew up in the timber industry. He was a third generation logger. And so as a part of that, like we were cutting, probably maybe 100 cord of firewood every summer, right? Depending on where his logging jobs were and how much excess firewood he had, and bringing that to, again, the widows, right? He was always taking care of the older ladies in our community, whether or not they went to our church or whether or not they were Christians. And so that was something that was from my earliest memory. We were all going out cutting, my dad would fire up the chainsaw. He would cut the wood with the chainsaw. My brother Joby would split the wood, and me and all my siblings would load it into the truck. Then somebody would be in the truck stacking it. We just kind of had the whole assembly line established for my earliest memory. And again, I never questioned it. It's like my dad would come home from work and he'd load us up before dinner and we'd go get a load of firewood, or after dinner in the summer, we'd all load up and we would drive to wherever he was logging at the time, cut a load of firewood, go drop it off, stack it at a lady's house in the community. And then in addition to that, just general tree service my dad would do a lot of, and he'd always bring us along. And so, obviously he was the one with the skill and with the equipment and the know-how when it came to, falling trees that were close to people's homes, or even if trees had kind of like, some blowdowns in people's yard that became kind of a hazard for them. He was the go-to guy in our church and in our community. And so and it was always a family affair. It's just so funny, like he would go, or if he had to limb a tree down or have to take the top of a tree off because it was becoming a blowdown hazard, he would do the technical work. He would do the more dangerous work or the work with the equipment. And then me and my siblings were always taking the branches, making a big fire / pile, burning them, clearing, bringing the rakes, clearing out the yard after we cleared the branches out. And so that, again, happened countless times. And it was never this established thing where it was, at the family dinner table, Dad's like, all right, guys, we need to serve together. This is how we're going to do it. It wasn't this formal proclamation of we're putting our service hat on now and let's all go do it as a family. It just was an overflow going back to like that abundance, that hospitality. My dad looking to his family first and foremost, and then looking at the skill set that he had, and then looking at the necessities of the community and being like, man, just matter of fact, this is a practical thing I can do for the older ladies in the community, and my kids can come along and help me.
That's really cool, and I can relate to that. Service wasn't something that in our home was really talked about necessarily. It was just lived out. Mm-hmm. And so when there was a need, my parents were so quick to fill the need. And, we had a widow in our community at one point, and we just did her lawn every single week. She was an older lady on oxygen, and so it was hard for her so we would water her lawn, we put in a sprinkler system, and then we just, would mow every single week, and weed whack and stuff like that. My family, so we were just like such an en masse group. We help people a lot with like moving, mm-hmm. or, yard work, or we'd show up and someone just had like a big work project and we would just come over en masse and knock it out real quick. Yep. And it was always really fun to get dirty and feel like, whoa, we got so much done. You just, it's to this day, my family comes over to our house and we'll like clean the kitchen afterwards or something. It's just like, whoa, you guys did that so fast when you're used to doing everything yourself or with one other person to help. And so I loved that experience growing up. Both my grandpas started family camps, mm-hmm. Both very different, but we would volunteer at those and get them ready for people. So come in and weed whack, clean the bathrooms, limb trees, do all the projects there, wash hundreds of chairs, stuff like that. Mm. And I don't know, like it was just a consistent part of our life, both in our community and then for our family. Out of state or whatever, if someone needed help with a project, we just show up and put a lot of wind in their sails. And so that was a fun thing to do growing up.
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned moving because there's just too many memories to count of going to an older couple's home and boxing up all their stuff. A lot of times helping them move into a nursing home or into a retirement community, or if a spouse had passed away, going and helping them pack up, their spouse's stuff. And like not knowing who these people were. And this is the thing, my parents were born and raised in the community that I grew up in. And so many times it'd be like, hey, we're going to so-and-so's house to help them. And I'd always say like, who's so-and-so? And the connection was always so random. They're like, oh, they were my second grade teacher, or they were the sister of, my second grade teacher or something like that. And so there was all sorts of connections that my parents had through our small community. And it wasn't burdensome. And I think anytime, I'm sure if there was complaining or, grumbling from us kids, and this is the other thing, my dad made it fun, right? So in the sense that the work itself is always going to be work, and there's going to be labor and monotony in work. But, after dropping off the load of firewood and stacking it at the lady's house, we'd always go get a treat, right? Or you'd go get a special milkshake or whatever, after doing it. And so it was a positive association, even though of course it was work, and it wasn't, we weren't just using our free time how we wanted to be using our free time. And then I think as we got older and we were probably grumbling and complaining, he probably got more to the heart of it, especially in this transition a lot when we started playing more music in nursing homes as a family, because that wasn't like we didn't view that as a fun thing as kids. We loved playing music. We loved playing together, but like a nurse, when you're like 12 and 13 and 14 years old, you want to go play and you want there to be like cute girls in the audience, or peers and stuff like that. And so when you're 12 years old, going and playing at a nursing home, it didn't get me excited, but that's where my dad had a lot more of the heart-to-heart conversations of why we're doing this, and why he felt like it was incumbent upon us to be an encouragement to the elderly and to go and serve them in that way and to be a blessing to them. And so, yeah, I think that when we were kids, it was just what we did. We didn't question it. It was fun. As we got older and we started having more of an opinion on what we'd rather be doing with our time, that's where my dad probably started, sharing more of the why and the heart of it.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I forgot about playing at nursing homes too. That was something that we did growing up. And it is really fun. That's something we would like to do with our children that we haven't yet, to just see the older people light up and just realize that someone cares about them. So, I mean, as far as like, okay, what are we doing with our own family right now? I do feel like service starts in your own home. Our oldest is 7. And so there's a lot of ways that they can just serve each other and help serve their parents and serve the family. And so I feel like primarily that is where our service is right now in terms of teaching our children service. When we go over to someone's house, are they clearing their dish? Are they thanking them for the meal? Are they helping pick up when they leave? It's really simple, small things right now. We haven't done really big. I mean, they'll help us when we cook our meal for home group. The kids will help with that process, setting out the food or helping me cook it the day of or bringing stuff in. But we haven't done a lot of big, noteworthy projects for people or something like that. For the most part right now, it's very small, and they're really just whatever Elisha and I are participating in, they help us, if that's, helping our community or not. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I can foresee, at least even in talking this out, I think I do want to replicate a lot of those things for our family, just because you said when there are many of you and there's a massive numbers, you can get a lot of work done. And I want that to be something that's normal in our children, even if it's a Saturday afternoon, I want it to be not crazy and unexpected if we all load up and go help a lady move, or go cut a load of fire, whatever, do a yard project for someone. And likewise with performing at nursing homes, we've already talked about doing that, hopefully in the near future here as well.
Yeah.
Okay, moving on.
There's lots of opportunities, and I think just as you have the ear to the ground in your community, then you'll hear what those specific needs are, and it's fun to be a family that can jump on board.
We love live music in our home. I think you would love live music in your home if you don't already enjoy it in your home. And that's why we made Voberg Music Academy. Check out the coupon below and you get a special discount for being a listener of this podcast. And you can bring live music into your home. Piano, guitar, fiddle, mandolin, ukulele. If any of those instruments sound like fun to you to learn or to have your children learn, go check it out. Let's see. This is an interesting. It's funny. We just encountered this question last night. Actually, do you guys have? Let's see. Do you guys have? Okay. Do you guys have put have you guys put in place a will for who should become the legal guardian of your children in case both of you die? For example, in a car accident, and she's been considering it more because they're traveling more frequently and they don't necessarily, want to leave it up to the court system should both of them die.
Yeah, so we actually just talked with who we would like to be the guardians of our children right now, and got a verbal consent. And so that was a great conversation. We did that a few months ago. We've not got our will written down yet. And that's something that we've been talking about doing.
Yeah, I think that's something that we want to take action on pretty soon. It's so hard to prioritize that.
I know. It's hard to prioritize dying when you're living. Yeah. But it is something I think that's important. And I also just want, at least if we just wrote down our wishes, on a piece of paper or whatever. I think having conversations with our family is a good thing too. Yeah. Just because we do have so many eager family members that are so gracious and would all be so willing to take our children.
Yes.
We wanted to make our wishes known from a parenting perspective of like, okay, this is what we would be ideal to us. And so we've had a few more of those conversations recently.
Yeah. And I think my parents, changed a handful of times because, like Katie said, we can list off, all of our family is amazing, right? Yeah. In-laws, siblings. And so you could say, man, any of those would be such a blessing for our children. But we want to be conscientious and thoughtful about where those families are at in their seasons of life. And so I think that can ebb and flow. And I know that certainly was the case with my parents where, it was one particular family that was our guardians for a season. And then because of the nature of their life, they felt like it was probably more appropriate and better for everyone to have it be somebody else. And I think they changed it 3 or 4 times. And so I could foresee that happening
in our home too, growing up. And until I was like 18. And then I told my parents, I'm like, I do not want to go to anybody else. Like, we'll do this. Maybe people can like help financially provide for us or something like that. But I want to stay all together as a family. And like, I didn't really want someone else's opinion at that point because we had such a strong family culture. I wanted to keep it together if my parents died. But yeah, I think initially, like when our kids were very young, it just was like grandparents immediately. And it would kind of fluctuate depending on what stage of life even Elisha or my parents were in, who we thought would be maybe the best fit to take on a bunch of kids. And then now I just, it would be siblings actually. Yeah. Probably, hopefully with the input and support from grandparents, just like we have. Yes. But not wanting to, as our parents are getting older, have, 5 or 6 kids come into their life. Yeah. At an older age. I think it could be difficult to keep up with the energy and the demands of that family. Yeah. Just because our kids are so young.
The nice thing is, I think if we specified a family member, to take our kids, that both sides of our families would be extremely supportive and available. So I think the biggest fear is like that you don't specify any family member and somehow through whatever crazy scenario, some judge not liking Christians or something, assigns your children to the state or something.
I do not think that would happen.
Yeah, I'm just saying in like a weird, wacky world. But at least if it ended up with really any of our siblings on either side or either of our parents, both sides of the family would be extremely involved and participators and very willing, which is extremely comforting and really, yeah.
And we would feel very grateful and at peace with any of that happening. It's more like there's things like, oh, I'd like to keep all the kids together and stuff like that. And that's a really big ask to make of somebody. Right. So, it's even less like, who we would feel comfortable raising our children and more like who are we comfortable making that ask of, partially to be like, hey, if we died, would you add our 5 kids or our 6 kids to your family? That's a really big ask to request. So,
and I think it's actually helpful just to even think about that in regards to ministry in general. When you're thinking about people, going back to the adoption question, a lot of times you can like just look at other people's lives and just like, oh, okay, he just, went part-time in his career job so that he could go back to, to go to grad school. like clearly that's just not a season maybe for that family for this particular ministry. Or, wow, that's great. They're in this season. Their kids are at this age. He's had a successful career. They're in a place financially where they've got, abundance, or they've got some bandwidth there. That might be a more appropriate time for this. Or their health, like, man, like people's health comes and goes, doesn't it? When you think about just the journey, the course of a life, somebody at, in their mid 30s cannot be in any place relatively close to having bandwidth, and yet through the Lord's working, through health changes, through saving money, through business decisions, like 7 years later could be in a completely different spot and have bandwidth to pour into the community, to pour into children and all that.
I mean, the thing is, though, is that really, like, as parents, you all know this, once you have children, it doesn't matter what your bandwidth is for the rest of your life, you have those children.
No doubt.
So, I mean, regardless of what stage we're asking someone to take our children on, they're just going to take them on for life, and it's going to be through all the ups and downs, So,
yes.
Yeah, so we'll see.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny how even that I think like a year ago, that would have bummed me out to think about. But I think just in growing in confidence in the Lord's sovereignty, his plan for our children, it doesn't sadden me like it used to think about. I mean, obviously it saddens me. I want to see all my children, grow up and get married and have children and all of that. But I don't think there's any fear like there used to be. It's sad for me to think about, but maybe it's less fearful for me to think about, my children being raised by other people and all that. So, yeah. Okay, let's see here. This is a practical question. How do you wean your little ones from thumb sucking, and what age do you generally start that process?
Okay, so I used to have an Instagram highlight on this when we did Instagram. I don't know if it's still up. But yeah, so all of our kids were thumb suckers. I sucked my thumb till I was 7, and my mom tried everything, including like that. It's probably like super toxic, but you like put some nail polish type stuff on that tastes really bad. And I started really liking the taste of it. I remember my parents threatening me with, "You're going to have braces one day." And I was like, that is so cool. I love braces. Like it just wasn't working, right? I didn't actually have to have braces, which is kind of impressive. But I mean, for being such a long thumb sucker. So we wanted our children to suck their thumbs. I did from an early age because I grew up trying to find, a couple of my siblings were pacifier suckers, and I hated finding their binky in the middle of the night on a road trip and they're just screaming their head off. So we went with the thumb because it's attached. And at 5 and 4 years old is when we weaned Leon and Lucy, our 2 oldest, from their thumbs. It was at the same time. They both had a snuggly blankie, and they really only sucked their thumbs when they had the snuggly blankie. So we took the blankie away because that was the trigger. We put socks on their hands, and I used kind of that wide, soft bandage tape to bandage tape the socks onto their hands. Now, they could still pull them off, but I would know that the seal was broken. If there was just socks, they'd pull them off, and then maybe they'd put them back on, right? So that was what we did for nap time and for bedtime, because they were not daytime thumb suckers. That wasn't something we allowed. And so that worked. If they kept it on until the morning, they got a Tic Tac every morning that the bandage was unbroken. And I think they did it for 5 or 6 days. And then we took the bandages off and the gloves off when they went to bed. And I bought on Amazon these cheap little gloves that had a little thumb case on them. So they were open fingered, but they had a thumb fabric over the thumb. And the kids could take those off. But at this time, the habit was broken. So it was really more just a reminder. So they weren't absentmindedly putting their thumb in their mouth. Yeah. And that was it. So Leanne and Lucy were like a week. No big deal. Louie, our third, went a little longer. He didn't have a fuzzy blankie. And so he just became a daytime thumb sucker. I got a little lax with him, let him do that. And that was harder to break. So we ended up getting the same process, but we did end up getting these kind of mesh gloves, similar concept of the thumb just being covered. But he wore those throughout the day. And he had to do that for a couple weeks before that habit was broken, because it was just too kind of constant for him. So he had to wear those consistently. Yeah,
it was ingrained. And this person, their oldest is 18 months. And they're wondering, when they should start that. Yeah, so they're very attached to their thumb right now. It has been interesting, because I certainly didn't want. I think 4 and 5 was a little older than what I preferred when it came to. But here's the deal. The reason it wasn't too much of a, I guess I wasn't too bummed out with it, is because, like you said, the first two weren't daytime thumbsuckers. It was like this snuggly. They'd get in their bed, get their blanket, suck their thumb.
Like our fourth is that way.
And
he doesn't suck his thumb during the day. So you don't see this
Exactly.
kid walking around with their thumb in their mouth.
Yes. And I didn't want my 7, 8, 9-year-old walking around, like you said, in public spaces, sucking their thumb. Because you see that from time to time. It's just not a great look, right?
Really,
Like,
after they're a toddler, like 2, it's just like daytime thumb sucking is not socially acceptable. So it doesn't mean that a child doesn't do it, but it is kind of frustrating as a parent because it starts to just be germier and it's not as sweet and snuggly like, oh, you're a baby. It's just kind of like, why are your fingers in your mouth?
Yeah.
So anyways, we went a little long with Lewis, but around 4 years old is when I think it's a good time to break the habit. That's when we've done it.
Yes.
And again, because I was such a late thumb sucker and a lot of my siblings were late thumb suckers, none of us thumb suckers had to get braces, by the way.
That is interesting.
I kind of think that's a myth.
You think so, huh?
I do.
Well,
I think whether you get braces or not has more to do with genetics and less to do with whether you suck your thumb or not.
Sure, yeah. F1 was more of a
Like
indicator.
with overbites or stuff like that. But
Yeah. Okay, what car do you guys plan to drive when you have 6 babies? What car did your parents drive when they had 10 plus kids? Our family is growing and we drive an 8-seater Toyota Sienna, but not sure what we would do for our next car. Lord willing. Thanks. But tell you what, this is it's our least favorite.
Argument.
It's our least favorite conversation. I don't know if it's an argument.
Well, okay, we have different desires.
Yeah, okay. But I think we're united in that we're not that stoked about the situation. We don't like car shopping. We don't like car purchasing. All of our cars at this point we've driven until we couldn't fit any more car seats into them. Then we were forced to get another car. And so yeah, we're pregnant with our 6, and I didn't realize that's a huge jump. I mean, it's obvious maybe to a lot of people, but I don't spend time thinking about cars, and that wasn't a thought that we had when we got pregnant with our 6
at all.
Just it didn't register. And so recently our current car broke down, and it seats 7 people. It's a Ford Explorer. And when I was at the dealership to get it fixed, I asked if I could look just at what they had, an inventory there for 8-seaters or more, and they had 0 cars on the whole lot, the whole Ford dealership. And it's like a huge dealership, with like hundreds of cars. And they had 0 cars for me to look at that had 8 seats or more, or all 7-seaters. Even if they had like an Expedition, it was like the
bucket seat.
Yeah. Like the captain seat, 7-seater. I was like, whoa, this is going to be more of a challenge than maybe what I first thought. And so we've started the conversation. It really depends on the day. I think for you and I, lots of our friends, those close to us have the Ford Transit. That's a popular one in our neck of the woods. Your parents have the Mercedes Sprinter. It just seems like such a huge jump. So growing up, we had like what I always thought were just the normal 15-passenger vans. We had,
it's like the white church van, or yours was gray, I think.
Yeah, and they were great. Like, and I wish they made them like that more.
Yeah, me too. So Elisha and I both basically don't want to go for the giant. What are those vans with the tall ceilings? Like, it's a type of car. Are they Transits? Is that just what they all are?
Or is that
just Fords?
I think Fords is called the Transit, and then
you guys know what I'm talking about, though. It has the high ceiling, and what drives me nuts about those is, one, it seems like they're all really loud, all the ones I've driven in, and we have little kids, and they're just way in the back there, and it's so loud, and then the seats are so tall you can't see the kids, and I loved our 15-passenger van.
Me too. Loved
with
ours.
The low seats. You felt all really close together. Like, even the 2 rows back, you still converse with the driver. And I loved it. Anyway, so that is kind of like my dream car is a converted all-wheel drive 15-passenger van like that with giant wheels. And leather seats.
Yeah, like a rack on top, maybe like a rocket box on there.
Like an adventure van.
Yeah.
With a low roof with the old like church style, not white, maybe like blue or something.
Sure. I mean, I would take the white one. The white one is the that's the quintessential homeschool van. Is
yes,
the white
and the
15
white
passenger.
one still like is kind of, I don't know.
Oh,
Doesn't look as cool to me.
I'd still take that one over all these new these new big vans. Yeah, so I'm with you. I think right now I probably wouldn't do the 15 passenger. I would do maybe a 12 passenger, but do the same thing that you're talking about. And I think they don't. It's hard to find them all wheel drive, and we do want that because of where we live. But I'm with you. Maybe like GMC or Chevy. Their 2000. I don't know what year it would even be. I don't think they make them new anymore. But get them, and then like you said, get them stomped a bit. Get some big
like convert them. I don't know. So anyways, you guys let us know if you have a van that's like the old style 15 passenger vans or 12, and you've converted it, like, or you bought one that was converted into a 4x4, like, did it drive well? Did you have issues with it? Mm-hmm. We would be really curious about that because we don't like buying cars. We really want to buy one that's new or going to run for a very long time. And that's kind of what stresses me out about buying a used car like that that's been converted, as I'm like, I don't want to be going, like, taking it into the shop all the time. We really rely on these cars. We travel a lot. We put a lot of miles on cars. So anyways, that is what makes me lean towards getting a Transit or something like that, because you can get it built. You can get it off the lot. It's new. We know we'll be able to drive it till our kids are out of it.
Yeah, there'll be a lot of warranty stuff with that. You know, you'll get it. Yeah.
So anyways, we're going back and forth on that. So we might end up in the end with a Transit, but that doesn't excite either of us. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I don't know, but we have to get a new car here.
Yeah.
So
because when we talked about going to just an 8-seater, like what you have, the Sienna, or you know, an 8-seat Expedition or Suburban, that still, I guess, is a possibility.
This is the part we disagree on.
Yeah. It is.
You say why you like it. Yeah. And I'll say why.
I mean, I think they're just extremely comfortable to drive. They're nice, like just all those reasons. It's like it's easier to find those luxury. And so, you know, I think once you're going 15 passenger or 12 passenger, you're thinking pretty utility.
Economy.
Yeah, exactly. Which I'm fine with. Obviously, we just might be in that season of life. And we've never been luxury car people. The current car we have now is by far the nicest car we've ever had. It has like leather seats and stuff, which is great. But every time, like, we've rented when we've traveled like we've rented an Expedition and a Suburban, and we're like, man, I get used to this. This is nice. They are big, you know, it's kind of like driving a boat, but it doesn't seem like it would be as, obviously they're not as big and I think clunky as a 15 passenger. And so I still want, but then of course we're limited at the 8 and we're already.
So for me, I think we don't even fit in that car already, because everywhere we go, we have either Elisha's musical instruments or the kids' musical instruments. We've got a stroller. We're still hauling this puppy around for who knows how long. We have our skis, like, where are all the skis going to go? And Elisha's like, we can get a rocket box. And I'm like, that is a huge rocket box. We need to like haul a trailer if we're getting an 8-seater. So I'd really love to be able to like throw an ice chest in the back.
Yeah.
Or like, you know, we really have to consider priorities every time we go somewhere. And even right now, we're like renting a trailer every time we go somewhere because we can't fit it in our Explorer. So I know it's a first world problem, but we've basically got too much gear. And I would love to just be able to throw the kids in there, throw whatever I think would be nice, a pack and play, you know, and not have to be like we've gone multiple places and bought a pack and play at the event.
Right.
Because we cannot haul the pack
Right.
and play.
And then we just like leave it there, give it to someone. Yeah.
So we've done it twice. So anyways, I'm just kind of like, I just would really appreciate more space, even if it's not necessarily for more seats.
Yes. Yep. Well, I was going to read one more, but you think we should?
do it.
Okay. Do you think the kids are waking up from naps? Should we check on them or just?
You want to check on them real quick?
Let's listen here. They might stay quiet for another.
Let's do one more.
One more. Okay.
Yeah.
Pull up another question.
They'll find us if they need us.
Boy, okay, how to narrow down. Let's see here. How about, boy, do you want to talk about, you know, managing the home while husband's away for work and ministry multiple days, or modesty with boys and husbands when you're like at the beach and stuff, you know, dealing with
Modesty with boys and husbands, like what they should wear or what they should see?
Like being around immodest women with your husbands and boys. Which one sounds
like
better?
tactics for blinders, or like
Yeah, I mean, you'll choose one.
Just put the horse blinders on. Just put a bandana on and walk them on down to the
It
beach.
sounds like you got a lot to share about that one, so I'll read that one. Okay. We recently went on a family camping trip to a state park. It was a popular state park, so there were a lot of people at the beach. And then, film, you can go from there, right? Like, she was really blown away with how immodest the swimsuits were, leaving nothing to the imagination. How do you deal with this as a woman? How do you talk with your husband about this before going into the situation? And how do you talk about it afterwards? She wants to be confident in her conviction to be modest, because she was talking about, she was almost jealous. Like, man, she feels like she can't dress this way. Mm-hmm. It's definitely on her conscience to do that. But that she was almost tempted to want to dress that way, to try to whether compete, for her husband's attention or whatever. I mean, she didn't say that. I should have probably just read the whole thing. I always do this. I'm like, I'm going to paraphrase to really, to make this quick and punchy. And then I add 7 paragraphs in my own thoughts.
Okay, so I totally relate with that, going out to, going to Hawaii or something like that and getting jealous of like, okay, I feel convinced to not dress this way, but you're kind of flaunting your stuff over there. And it's like, you do feel that like competitive vibe. Like, how do you have a leg up on me in the situation of like tempting my husband? I think I've gotten competitive in those situations of like, I could look good in that too. And I don't have the option of wearing that. You kind of feel like, I don't know, just in an awkward situation there. And I would encourage you to really, could you pull up the question, because I was reading it and I think the way that it was worded really sparked something for me. I wrongfully started to wish I could dress like that, and is what the question reads. And I would really encourage you. I think this is a healthy desire to want to be desired by and want to appeal to our husbands. And you have the opportunity to do that in a private setting. Mm-hmm. And so I'd really lean into that and have fun with that aspect of your marriage. And I feel like when I am doing that more, I feel so confident, I feel so secure in Elisha's love and in his desire for me and in my appeal to him, that I'm totally comfortable being the mom on the beach. And it's like, you know what, like, now's not my time. Mm-hmm. I don't need to show off or just present myself to everybody here. Mm-hmm. This is not my moment. It's back home with just my husband. And I know that I have a lot of power in that situation, so I think some women maybe feel like they never get out of being in like mom mode or like, okay, I'm always, wearing a sundress. And I think that there's a healthy desire to be like, hey, I would like to be edgy and desired. Mm-hmm. So lean into that. And it can be really fun for you and your husband. It's just time and place, right? Yeah. And that can build a lot of confidence and intimacy in your relationship. And so you're not really stressed out so much about what other women are wearing. You're like, I have my husband's heart, Yeah.
And the right kind of man, a Christian man, doesn't want you to be that way publicly.
Yeah. You actually lose, respect.
Yes. And it's not, and then also like, and that's the thing too, is it's a weird thing to pit yourself against, and men can do this in different ways too. It's like your spouse married you, and so that you got to remember that, like he chose you, and those vows mean something, and obviously the covenant means something. Now, obviously the temptation to lust and to have sinful thoughts about other women, that's been a part of not God's plan. That's been a part of part of our fallen nature, I should say, since the fall, right? Even in the church, even with God's people. And so, yeah, is it like a true fear, insecurity? Of course, like, women can relate to that insecurity and that fear. But to think that you're not playing on the same, it's like, that's a totally different game. It's mm-hmm. It's a different set of rules that you're playing by, and you're trying to win a different game. And that is this long-term, meaningful, romantic marriage. And like you said, there is that aspect that you can touch on in the privacy of, of the marriage, the marriage bed, mm-hmm. and of your bedroom. And you can have fun with that. And, and I think just the more you become like what you have become, just a godly woman of integrity and of character, I can't, see a woman that, like you say, is flaunting it and not be filled with appreciation for you, right? Because it's the opposite of it is, it is, you don't want the Proverbs 5 or 7 or, the woman on the street. And like, that sounds harsh, but that is how they are presenting themselves. Okay.
Yeah,
like, I'm not saying that they are
a high value woman.
You're not.
You just aren't.
Yeah.
When you're presenting that way.
Yeah.
And I do think too, like with the body positivity movement and stuff, we say, okay, the more you're showing, the more secure you are. But in reality, that's a total lie, because a very secure woman can go to the beach, wear whatever she's comfortable wearing, walking around like with her kids and her husband, and
meaning something
that's modest and appropriate, right, and covered up, and feel so much confidence and sense of self-worth in that moment. Whereas now when I see a woman, it's kind of like the more she's showing, I feel bad. It's like an insecurity. It's like, oh, is your husband not telling you you're beautiful, so you need to be here on the beach where everyone can look at you? Or it's daddy issues, it's husband issues, it's not feeling appreciated by men or your man who the Lord gave you. And so you need to go out and garner attention. And it's kind of like that loud woman in Proverbs, that's a Proverbs 5 and Proverbs 7, where you need attention from everybody, because you aren't just secure in first and foremost who you are before your creator, but then also just in the love and affection of someone who truly cares for you. Yeah. And so being able to flip that in our minds too, and I'll be like, wow, that's a really brave woman that's just so confident. Yeah. And so being like, no, the confident woman doesn't need to be loud in those settings and need to have all the eyes attracted to herself.
Yeah, it is. I feel like, that might have been the last of it, but I'll keep saying really quick. I think it is a fun thing to pursue, only caring about, if your spouse thinks you're sexy, then being so content with that, being so satisfied with that and happy with that, because that is a blessing, and that's the way God, I think, intended it to be. And there's so much safety and fulfillment and fun and adventure in that.
Yeah. And do you mind is it okay if we just keep going for a few minutes on the audio?
Yeah.
Okay. I think too, there is something that's really special about being okay bringing this up to your husband too. I mean, there were times when I was first married and I would let you know, like, I'm just so, like, I'm sorry, I'm so insecure right now. Like, we get home and I'm just like, I hate that there's all these beautiful women out there and I am in my third trimester and like, I want to be attractive for you. And I would just feel like a blob. And just sometimes being able to air it out, it's not so much our husband's issue sometimes, it's our own issue. And we think, oh, they're going to be tempted by all these women. And it's not to say that's not, a constant battle for them or something that they have to choose to not do, but also just like letting him know he's on your side. And in this situation, you're on each other's team. Yeah. I think has been really healing. And also like not being opposed either to, if you go out in a setting like that and then your husband comes home and is, like wanting to enjoy intimacy with you. I think I used to be like, oh my goodness, you got turned on at the beach and now we're coming home or something like that. Like taking it like kind of over,
thinking it?
Or just like freaking out about it. You know what I mean? Like, you're thinking about all these other girls and I'm the only one that you could have or whatever. We play these like different mind games with ourselves, and instead just being like, this is a really beautiful thing, that this is something that only my husband and I can share. Yeah. And, just being confident and secure in your relationship. So like, your husband's purity is between him and the Lord, and it affects you for sure. It affects your marriage for sure. But just knowing that there's nothing that we can do as women to like force purity on our husbands. So it's like, we could pray for them. We can, we can love them in all ways. But then there's nothing that we can do to force them to do the right thing either. So you just have to have confidence and trust in your relationship and know that your husband is going to be trying to walk uprightly before the Lord, just as you're trying to walk uprightly before the Lord. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that even in our short time as a married couple, I think of the ebbs and flows of when it's hard to for there to be like a rhyme or reason for when times of temptation come or not there. Cause we can go whole summers And people would say like, man, the swimwear these days is ridiculous. And I'll be like, it's nuts, is I haven't even thought about it for a long time. And then there's been summers in our marriage where I'm like, honestly, I don't feel like I can go out for a run right now. Like every time I'm out for a run or every time we go for a drive, it's like, wow, this is a real challenge. And it's hard to pinpoint like, oh, were those extra attacks by Satan because of something that's going on in your life, or were you not as frequent in your intimacy? Was it, and I can't attribute it to like, oh, you were pregnant or you weren't pregnant, or our sex life was great or it wasn't great. And I think that's oftentimes what the woman tries to do, is to be like, so what is it? Like,
what can I do? How can I fix it?
Yeah. What triggers it? What causes this? And it's, I mean, again, I truly can, and like just my short, young adult life, be like, oh, this is always what makes it harder, or makes it more of a challenge. And so I guess I'm saying like that to say, like, with you just being like, hey, like, just be confident in who you are. And like, I'm saying that to say it's incumbent, it's on the husband. It's like, at the end of the day, like, we are the ones that need to take our thoughts captive. We are the ones that need to have self-control with our eyes and not have, wandering eyes. And if I were to pinpoint something, it's probably just kind of like how full and busy and stressful my life is in general. Like, people will talk about like, oh, I'm stressful and I fell into sin. It's like, I feel like it's always been the opposite for me. Like, when my life's full and stressful, it's like, I don't have, like, that doesn't show up on my radar. It's when you've got,
just keep your husband stressed out.
Yeah. It's when you've got like free time, I feel like, or just, your thoughts aren't always occupied with work or children or new things.
But I could see it being different for different people, because some people would see it more as a welcome, like, distraction, from those things. And I think too that when it comes to like security in your marriage, it's not just like physical intimacy that builds security, because I think obviously like the whole sexual thing is all tied, right? We see these women dressed in these provocative outfits and we think immediately like intimacy or sexuality. But sometimes just the security in your emotional relationship with your husband, and, just overall connectedness and companionship and comfortability bringing things up can really affect your security in these moments as a wife. Because when I'm just feeling really connected with Elisha, it doesn't mean he's not struggling with his thoughts or whatever, but I'm not struggling with mine. And I'm just able to be confident and secure and be his wife and be a supportive person, instead of feeling needy and clingy and getting caught up in my own thoughts, comparing my own body with all the bodies I'm seeing. And just instead of being like, there's always going to be someone with like longer legs and tanner skin and like a more attractive toned figure. And that's just the way life is. Like, you're never going to have it all. So but what I do have is Elisha 24/7.
Yeah.
And that Cal doesn't,
Yeah.
Like, I have my husband's heart and he has mine, and we have something in a covenantal relationship that no one else can touch. And so I'm not competing with these women out here, like I have it all.
Yes.
And, so not kind of lowering my mental state to a competitive state on a very one-dimensional level.
Yeah. Like you said, you're not competing.
No,
like,
I'm not. Like, this is not what I'm doing.
Yep.
And that is the beauty of marriage and the beauty of a Christian marriage, because women are out there that are married and are still competing. And it's just it's not a healthy place to be. That's not how God intended it. We're supposed to be secure in our marriages.
Amen.
And that's the blessing of them, is that the competition whole thing, it's over.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah. Good. Hey, there it is. Folks, thank you all so much for listening. We'll talk to you next time. Bye-bye.